Hey, what's up, everybody? Will here from Against.The.Galaxy, and it's time. This is what everybody's been asking me for. I've been getting my DMs hit up constantly. I know a lot of people got Lil coming up, and they want to know how to play Sabine like I did. So I got Mike with me. He was my other teammate who was on Sabine,
Hi, what's going on?
and we're just gonna go through this. A lot of this I've talked to him about. A lot of this has kind of evolved over time. I learned stuff throughout that tournament and really just getting a breakdown and talking about everything that happened. That way we can get Mike prepared to get his bye because on our team, we want everybody to get their bye at Vegas. We're 2 out of 5 so far. We got 3 left to do, and Mike's locking in on Sabine. Hopefully, the other guys will too. Now that I've taught them a couple lessons, but I had a couple more lessons to teach, and hopefully this puts them over, and you guys get to listen at home and put yourselves over too. Hopefully, somebody takes this to a PQ, wins themselves something, and yeah. So Sabine ECL. I feel like I don't have to talk about this leader. This is the best aggro leader Star Wars has seen. It came in set one. We thought we might see something better. Every set we get tempted, and every set we find out we were wrong. Sabine is still the queen. Um, Energy conversion lab, it's kind of the same deal. There's You can talk about other bases if you want to, but when it comes to aggro and when it comes to pushing damage and when it comes to this specific build, there's nothing better than an energy conversion lab. Um, Obviously, 25 health versus the 30 health, a little bit lower. We don't care. We're gonna win in time. It's gonna be okay. The ability is so good on Energy Conversion Lab that we're running the timely reinforcements. I'm just gonna go right down the list, talk about each card for maybe a half a second, and kind of get through, explain some of my choices, some of my more common choices, and some of my more out of the box situation. So I think that some of these cards are just completely locked in. If you're playing Sabine, there's zero chance that you can play any of it any less than these numbers of cards. Those cards I feel like almost don't need an introduction. We've been playing with them for 4.5 sets now, but I'll run down that list just so that we can figure that out. I got Rebel Assault, that's 3. That's always going to be 3. Battlefield Marine, 3 copies. The A Wings, I'm up to 5 space units. I did cut the 1-3. It's really bad into some of the space decks. It's a liability on defense and it's a liability in the mirror. You get your chip ECL'd into, and it only had 1 power. So their thing is nearly untouched and you're down a unit. So if I had to make one cut out of those, that was where it was going to be. You could talk about putting the third A Wing back in, but this deck is pretty tight for slots. Um, Sabine unit, that's never going anywhere. That's one of the best 2 drops in the game. Again, with the low power being a little bit of a liability to get ECL'd or ambushed into, maybe, but the ping is so strong against so many decks with Qira and Anakin running around with these shielded units, with these sentinel units, and stuff that you have to hit, and Sabine does it well. Cassian's a 3 of, that's never changing. That's probably our best 3 drop just for its versatility, not so much its power, but 3 mana 3/5 is a great stat line in this game. I mean, we're going to get into it more as we go, but we really like that 5 butt. Fleet Lieutenant, that's just an amazing aggro card. A 3/3 for 3 is a little bit below rate, but being ahead on the action economy of the game is a way that Sabine can get ahead. Getting 2 for 1's not necessarily in card advantage, but rather than taking 2 actions to play a unit and attack with a unit, we get to do it in one with Fleet Lieutenant. Sabine's Masterpiece is a new card for this deck, but it's already become a staple. I can't imagine running less than 3. It's just one of the more versatile cards in that it does so much in some of our really bad matchups. And then even when it's not, playing a pivotal role in turning the game in our favor because, we ECL it into their Falcon or whatever, it can just be played as a 3 drop. And now that's a huge issue that they're gonna have to deal with because if they let it attack, a couple times, just those abilities are gonna stack up very quickly. Continuing on with the stable cards, I want to skip over Sundari Wing Leader, but for a cause, that's a 3 of. There's a little stretch towards the end of set 4 or set 3, sorry. where we were trimming the number of four causes. The meta just kind of didn't line up in a way that was good. I'm not sure that was right then, but I know that it's wrong now. We want three. We need that extra reach, especially as some of these higher health decks are starting to pick up. Where they have the ability to get control of the game, and you get into a situation where you just need to push that last damage, and you might not have your unit survive. You need to push the three or four damage that four cause is going to give you. K2SO is also a staple. It has been since set one. 4 4 for 4 is a good stat line, but the overwhelm is amazing, and the ability changes games. Just the fact that you can drop it down as a 4 mana unit that they have to answer, and then even when they do, it's still putting three into their base. It's just very, very, very good. Dark Saber is a staple of Sabine now. The numbers we can go back and forth on, but Dark Saber's been a staple since it was printed in set two, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Huey's a debatable topic. We're going to get into that in a second, I'm sure. But you do need some number of Chewbacca's, regardless of you're in my camp where you don't want to max out on them, or you're in the camp where you just want every single one of those you can see. It's going to be some amount. Three posts, three records. This is how we end our game. This is the argument against us being an aggro deck and actually being a mid-range deck, because our best things come down on 5 and 6, but really they aren't how we are attempting to even really play or win the game. They're how we finish the game. And that's you need that kind of top end. I've tested different Sabine lists where we didn't go quite as big, especially back in set one days. And you end up losing the late game reach that we really want. That once these units were printed, they immediately gave us, and I think took Sabine from a very good deck to one of the best. And then quickly through those cards that are choices. Metal Ceremony, it's a debatable card. People don't like Metal Ceremony. I love Metal Ceremony. You'll notice in my list that there's a couple odd numbers like Dark Saber and Chewy being down to 2. Those cards are really good in the mirror, and I thought I was already really good in the mirror, and I was a little bit nervous about Quinlan. So I liked Metal Ceremony a lot in the Quinlan matchup, and it has a lot of utility elsewhere too. You see the card, you decide if this is going to be a Metal Ceremony game or not, and then you kind of go from there. Sometimes the card's going to get you 2 3 experience counters and be a 0 mana sword, and sometimes it's just not going to be able to get the job done, so you can just resource it. But having that flexibility was really nice, and then being able to game one against Quinlan when they go for the big force throw, try to kill a unit, make you discard a card, you're just like, I discard this. And which unit do you want to deal 0 damage to? It's also really good against Ahsoka. Ahsoka wants to tap down one of your card or tap down one of your units by making you discard a card, and having an extra non-unit card to discard. That way we don't get our unit tapped was really good. In my testing against Quinlan, Metal Ceremony felt great. It's a card I kind of really like anyways, but especially in the Quinlan matchup, it was something that I wanted to have access to. I just wanted the ability to have that card in my hand against them, and I really feel like the point where they think they're swinging the game, they're not anymore. All right, so Luke is a new addition. It's a 2 mana 3/2, but it's green, which is really important. Playing a green 2 drop lets us set up that Sabine's Masterpiece turn really well into a lot of matchups. It can be really important, but I don't really like playing them as a 3/2 just because the 2 toughness is a bit of a liability. There's a lot of things that can just wipe it out. He looks really bad into a Crafty Smuggler. He looks really bad into a couple of the other shielded 2/2s, or if there's any other unit, of relatively that size. 2 power is just something that they can do. Daring Raid, that's another one. There's a lot of ways to efficiently answer your creature, either with half of a card or just a whole card that costs less. But where Luke really shines is as a pilot. In a lot of matchups, it comes down to whose sword's bigger, and you just want to keep swinging with it. You want to go ship into pilot, into attack your face, attack your face, attack your face. You want to get the dark saber on Sabine in the mirror a lot. A lot of these racing games. but giving us more options to upgrade our units lets us condense our actions. Rather than playing 2 3 3s, we stack them on top of each other, and now we almost have a rebel assault every turn. Next, we got two Sundari Peacekeepers. This is a card that people have gone in and out of the main deck. Um, Again, like what I was saying with the medal ceremonies, I was hedging towards Quinlan, and against Quinlan, I want more X5s. I trimmed that number down to two just because, like the A Wing and like Sabine, that the low power on attack or on defense does become a bit of a liability. Units are able to attack into it with relatively no consequence. So it ended up being one of the last cuts of the deck as I was building, but I still really did like playing with it. I played the third in the sideboard. We'll get to the sideboard in a minute, but it's a card I liked having access to. I didn't necessarily need the full set in game ones. Then we get to Wing Leader. Wing Leader is like a baby sword. It's going to throw two counters on something. Most of our units are rebels. We don't have to worry about the synergy there, at least when Wing Leader comes down on the curve. So, like I was saying with Luke, we want to make our units bigger so that we can consolidate actions and we can get them dead faster. Wing Leader does that, and it also gives you some sort of protection from Power of the Dark Side, which is a tough card to play against if you have the plan of making your guys bigger so that you can consolidate actions. You throw a Luke on an A-Wing, feels great, then they power the dark side, now you have a tapped Luke, which is still very good, but it's not as good as you throw X-Wing counters onto an A-Wing, they power the dark side, I still got a huge A-Wing. So having that little bit of insurance in addition to the baby sword aspect of the card was really good. I liked having two. It's a card that's very cuttable. When we go to sideboarding, when you're scared of things like bamboozle, when you're scared of things that are waylay, that's a if you go battlefield marine into wing leader and they have a waylay, that feels really bad. So there's a lot of decks where you do end up cutting it, but just having access to it, especially game one, it was very strong in my mirror, and it basically took over the game. The fact that I was able to just do so much for so little, so efficiently. Then we get to the Dark Sabers and Chewies. I got two of each. This is a card that a lot of people want to run three. I could probably justify the third of either, but if we rely too heavily on that go tall plan, we run into issues like waylay, like things that tap our guy down, just getting blown out 2 for 1 on removal. Both of those cards have like unique ways to dodge that a little bit. Dark Saber's always going on a Sabine leader. The Chewy is pretty tough to defeat for some of the blue control decks, but they are getting more tools now. And my biggest fear is getting 2 for 1, and my biggest goal is 2 for 1ing them. And those cards, while very, very powerful, end up getting you 2 for 1 more often than not. You put them in a situation where you say, hey, do you have it? But when they do, it doesn't feel good. And a lot of these other cards, they don't necessarily do that same thing. Um, you you force them to have more answers, not less answers. Whereas Darksaber and Chewy kind of consolidate the number of answers needed for them to gain control of the game. So that's it for the main deck. We'll run through the sideboard real quick. Two confiscates. I'm not playing disabling Fang Fighters. I think being efficient with your resources is very important. I think confiscate is amazing in the mirror. When they go Dark Saber and you get to go confiscate into 3 drop, you feel amazing. You're just so far ahead in that game. They've wasted their entire turn to lose to a 1 resource card. It's good against pilots too. The thing with confiscate is that you're basically always taking you're taking a resource advantage. When I pay 1 to blow up the thing that you paid 3 to do, I'm ahead. As long as I can use my 2 resources efficiently, or 3 resources efficiently, or whatever the case may be. I want to get ahead in that kind of card advantage by saving my resources to do more impactful things and using less resources to beat things that you spent more resources on. I got 2 heroic sacrifices in the deck. I love that card. That card has been very, very good to me. It still stays in the side. I don't necessarily know that I can justify it being in the side as we get into the matchups. I bring that card in a lot. It is a great way to push through damage, but I also bring it in a lot because they know what they're doing against you, especially game two. You know, people have plans. The Dark Saber plan gets worse. The Pilot plan gets worse. A lot of your game one plans get worse, and they get better at stopping your unit. So with heroic sacrifice, it's you get that extra two damage. You get the attack, so you get a little bit of action condensing. You draw a card, so it's great. It replaces itself. You do lose your unit, which doesn't feel great, but a lot of times you're swinging something into something that was going to kill it anyways. You know what I mean? It lets you trade up into things, and it lets you just trade into bases very favorably. A lot of times you have a unit and you take the initiative, and you're going to get to attack first, but they're going to kill your unit. So kill it for them. I don't know. I mean, you push more damage, and we really want to be pushing those last points of damage. And heroic sac has done a really good job for me of doing that while still, keeping a card in my hand for Poe that I can discard later because it draws. It does a lot of things really good, and it's all for one resource. Again, being super efficient on resources is very helpful for us. I have three fighters for freedom. This was a card that in a perfect world, I'd have this in my main deck. The problem is we have Quinlan in our current world, and Quinlan eats 3/4 for lunch. If you have an X5, it's much, much stronger. That's why I have Sundari. I think that you could go back and forth whether that should be Sundari or fighters, but I want access to all six in my 60. But as far as which are in the main, it's definitely going to be a conversation about what you're hedging towards, because I was hedging towards Quinlan and a little bit towards the mirror with the Sundari choice, that and away from control or Anakin. This is where we ended up. But those cards come in a lot in the matchups where they're good. They're a pretty clean swap with the Sundaris, and it gives you game against all the shielded stuff and the Sentinels. Specifically from Qira. Kira's been really tough, being able to just shield up their guys, sentinel up their guys, and either going around them or right through them despite the shield is was very good for me. I got the third Sundari in here. Like I said, I want access to all six in the 60. And then we get to the last card, the ugly stepchild, unfortunately now. The two Bright Hopes in the sideboard that never came in once in Richmond. Um, Wish I played something different. I never felt like I wanted the Bright Hopes, even against the Han Pilot deck where it should be good. It's not really because their pilots one shot into it. You're giving them a small speed bump, but at the cost of four resources, at the cost of your pivotal turn. I think you slow yourself down more than you're slowing them down. So for that reason, it never really came in. There are definitely some space decks where, if I had faced against the Vader pilot deck, I'm sure it would have came in. There's plenty of matchups like an Imagine Kazuda. That's another one. I would definitely have brought it in those situations. I didn't see those decks, and the card just stayed in the sidelines the whole time. Um, I could absolutely see third Chewbacca in this sideboard and a third Confiscate. I think if I had a redo, that would be the switch I make. But then I feel like once I make that switch, I'm gonna wish I had the Bright Hopes. I'm gonna get paired against nothing but Kaz and Vader Pilot and Poe and just nonsense that I really wish I could gum up space a little bit. But yeah, that's the 60 we took to Richmond.
Awesome. Sweet. So I have some questions for you as we get into the matchups. So I will
Yeah,
keep us moving on here. My first
yeah,
matchup for you is Sabine ECL Mirror. So I
yep.
want you to talk me through kind of why we want the Wreckers out of our deck and the Metal Ceremonies out of our deck before we talk about what we bring in.
All right. So first of all, I guess the Wreckers come out because we do not really want to see the six resource turn. And if we don't want to see the six resource turn, we definitely don't want to see a six resource card. We can just cut those right out, trim down our deck, get our like lower average converted mana cost. I mean, that's the magic term, but the lower average cost of all of our cards down, it allows us to be a lot tighter, a lot leaner, and that's really what I want to be doing in the Sabine mirror is just getting them dead as quick as possible. And the medal ceremony, I think, can be very good. It's hard to figure out exactly what we want to cut in this matchup, and I felt like those were the lowest impact cards. You can definitely imagine starts where nobody's killing anybody's stuff, and all of a sudden we're really good. But I think that the Sabine mirror, if you're on the draw, you want to be ECLing your unit into their unit and living. Hopefully you have that opportunity. And because that happens, and then even the second turn, I think in this mirror, you want to be using your ECL very efficiently and quickly because it's tough to get up that high. You know what I mean? If you save it for a power wrecker, like the game's going to end before that happens. So without the ability to really go wide, because I cut the medal ceremonies assuming that I'm playing myself, even though I know I don't play Sabine exactly the same way everybody else does. So I won't necessarily have the units because if I do, I'm probably winning this game. Um, it's free, so we do get to stay very efficient. It does keep the curve low, but I don't necessarily think that putting one counter on something or even two counters on something really impacts the game enough at that stage of the game where I would want those in.
Alrighty, that makes sense. Um, why do you feel that we want to bring in these confiscates, heroic sacks, and the Sandari?
So confiscates, like I was saying earlier, I think you just blow out their dark saber, and the dark saber becomes very, very important in the race. So we want access to be able to stop the go tall plan that is so good against us. Um, that's actually doubling back to the medal ceremony. That's the other thing. I mean, I really want to pilot on turn two, so I still only have one unit. So even when things are going good, medal ceremony doesn't really shine because we would rather go tall. So yeah, the confiscates are just great against the go tall plan. So I have just really liked it. Heroic sack. That card is great at pushing damage, especially if you're not concerned about your creatures living. So heroic sack on the kill turn essentially can be the difference. If you hit a heroic sack at the right time, there's a good chance that you might take a whole action away from your opponent. And that game that they were going to win by one action, now you're doing that to them. Dendari for the restore. It's a good card to ECL into something if you get the opportunity to, because again, consolidating actions, I get to play a unit, attack with my unit, kill your unit, and heal some damage from my base. I'm getting pretty far ahead. So I want to bring in that third copy.
Awesome. And you've identified for us your two most important cards in the matchup, Dark Saber and Rebel Assault. I
Yep.
I definitely understand the Dark Saber, right? That's part of the go tall plan.
Yeah.
You could definitely throw in Luke Pilot and Chewbacca Pilot as ways to get tall.
Absolutely.
Rebel
Absolutely. We're only going to put two cards here, but at the same time, that it simplifies going tall.
and then Rebel Assault. Um, Again, another card that makes a lot of sense if we get to push the damage a lot faster and more efficiently with our actions. We can kind of burst through a lot of decks here.
Exactly.
Um, the
Exactly.
a question that I could see um, getting asked is, you know, yes, Sandari has the two restore, however, it does not work well with our Rebel Assault plan. And if we are looking to stick all of these units and keep our units around, why would we want to sack them with Heroic Sack?
So heroic sax killing on the kill. That's really our card for the kill turn. Um, we want to play that when there's not going to be an untap anyways. It's a little bit different in other decks, but or against other decks, but specifically here, but in general, but specifically here, we're not untapping with our K2 in this world. You know what I mean? So I can attack with it and deal four, or I can heroic sack, deal six, then it dies. I get to deal three more damage, and I don't even want to play next turn anyways. So, and if we do go to resource five, like it's a one action turn, the game's end. You know what I mean? Somebody's winning right after they claim on four. that's how most Sabine mirrors have played out for me. That's my timeline of a kill. So it's even though we're losing the unit, we're not really using the unit because I mean we don't need any more units once the game's over. So I just don't think we're gonna really suffer from losing the unit in that situation. And then I mean Sundari, it's not a rebel. You're right. The being leader is. So we only need one rebel. You know what I mean? The 2-drop rebel and rebel assault's great. You know what I mean? Or if we have a rebel assault hand, I mean, I'm not afraid of not playing the Sundari and trying to play a different 3-drop, uh, just for the sake of rebel assault. It's not that Sundari is always the choice just because we brought it in. Now all of a sudden, every time we have 3 resources and a Sundari in hand, we're playing Sundari. Everything is very context dependent, and there are hands that line up with a rebel assault that you just play them that way. But like I said, Sabine leader is a rebel, so as long as we have some kind of rebel on the ground, we're gonna get both of the attacks out of it.
Awesome. Um, and then one other question I had has to do with the Fighters for Freedom. Another card that
Sure.
is definitely grindy and can push a lot of damage. And in this matchup, we are not playing against a Tarkintown deck. So why would we not want to bring in our Fighters for Freedom if they are just as well statted as a Sundari in this matchup context, and also can push a little more damage up front?
They can push a little bit more damage, but the restore. So the reason that I like heroic stack a lot is because I feel like you can take an entire action away from them by pushing that extra 2 damage. Sometimes a little bit more than two, but 2 damage. Sundari does the opposite. You're taking an action away from them by undoing some of the damage that they've done, thus causing them to have to do an entire extra action to get back to where they were. So it's just a kind of way to get almost a little bit of card advantage or action advantage in the mirror. Like against any aggro really, but especially in the mirror because you're undoing some of the work that they've already put in.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's move into our next matchup. So I want you to take me through a Quinlan Tarkintown matchup. First off, we'll start with the board outs again. Why are we electing to take out the wing leaders and Chewbacca?
Because I'm scared of not so much Waylay for Chewbacca, but definitely Waylay for wing leaders. And Bamboozle is a very real card. If you wing leader your guy and they bamboozle it, it is tapped and those experience counters are gone forever. Not a good feeling. I really like going wide against Quinlan. I think that should be our priority. The Quinlan matchup's crazy. I had a lot of trouble with it in testing. Um, couldn't quite figure it out. I mean, feel better about it now. Obviously, I had a good run against it, but at the same time, that's just a deck that if you're not prepared, it's gonna take your lunch. Like, there's so many ways that they can just like get one step on you and then turn on the gas and you can't keep up. They play against us a lot of times like an aggro deck. It like the mirror where they want to beat us before we beat them, and they do so by just kind of tempoing us out. If we invest 3 resources into a wing leader and all we have is a 2-1 to show for it, they're going to be pretty far ahead, and then they can even just ping it off afterwards just by playing a 3-drop. Like their leader and cards just handle that card very well. And Chewbacca, I don't feel like the going tall plan is quite as strong against Quinlan. So I take one of those out. It would feel bad to get bamboozled. So and then it ended up being I mean, I'm not sure how prominent this is, but the guy who I played in the finals, Mike, he had 2 disabling Fang fighters and 2 bamboozles both in his main deck. So they're ready for the pilot plan. They're scared of the pilot plan, but they can blow out the pilot plan. So I just don't want to get 2-for-1. Quinlan wants to tempo you out of the game, and not letting them is the biggest way that I found to beat them.
Awesome. So going into our board ends, I think Sundari Peacekeeper we've talked about a number of times.
Yep.
Even in the deck tech about the 5 toughness. how is Heroic
Yep.
Sack different in this matchup than it is in the Sabine ECL matchup?
It does a lot of the same things. We want to heroic sack them for lethal. We want to be ending the game when we're casting that card, and we want that little bit of extra reach because Quinlan is good at tempoing us out of the game. Um, it also helps your units trade up. They have a lot of units that just kind of eat ours. They're big on, I mean, if you end up in a situation where you have a battlefield marine and they have a Cassian, like that Cassian's just gonna eat your battlefield marine. But you have the ability to just kind of take it out. You know, they play a lot of X5s and we play a lot of 3 power units. And while I think our primary game plan doesn't necessarily have us heroic sacking our guy into their guy, we end up heroic sacking our guy into their guy some amount of the time when we need to do things. It does a lot of work. I had one real cool you play with Poe Dameron and heroic sack, and Poe hit for 10. And hitting somebody for 10 is a huge portion of their life. So just having that extra reach was crucial in that match. I mean, we're gonna keep going through these matchups, and I'll tell you, heroic sack comes in very often. I don't know. I'd have to go back to the drawing board if I'd wanted in the main deck, but I really like bringing it in against a lot of these decks that are bringing in answers for our stuff anyways, and we're finding ways to like squeeze out more points of damage out of them.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to go over in the Quinlan Tarkintown matchup?
I think how we start this game is one of the more important things about this game. Um, we don't want to get our turn one play Tarkentown. It doesn't feel good. We spent, time and energy, and they didn't really, and they have something on the board, and we don't, and we are behind. So in every Quinlan matchup, I am actually most Tarkentown because we'll get into it with Cad too. But turn one, first of all, I don't even want the initiative if I can avoid it. I'll give it to them. They're pretty much always going to lead pass. I'll give them a ping. They'll pass again, and I will claim. If I have the initiative, same deal. I'm going to ping. They're going to pass, and I'm going to claim. In the worlds where they do play a 2 resource play, I think it's pretty safe to put our guy out there. Um, I think we can just start fighting, just start racing. They're going to look for a Tarkentown advantage somewhere else, but if they're not taking it off the first guy, then we can fleet lieutenant our guy, and then we can do this. We start getting those damage points in early, and their plan doesn't quite work as well. I think most Quinlan players think that they would rather go to the late game with us, but if we kill them in the mid game, they never get to that late game. So I think most of them think that that does benefit them, the pass claim, but it's the only way I would ever play it. If you know what I mean, if I am ever playing Quinlan Tarkintown, as long as I'm playing this deck, I am not putting a unit into their open resources. The biggest punish is obviously Spark or Rebellion. We can get beat up a little bit if we go ping and they go Spark. That actually happened in one of my games, and I didn't have a 2 drop anyway, so it wasn't the end of the world. But it still can be pretty tough. Like you keep a 2 drop and then they tap their resources. You get all excited that you're gonna put your battlefield marine down, and then they spark you. And it's like they Quinlan or it's like they ping and Tarkentown's your guy, but they didn't even have to do that. A little bit worse for them because they don't have a unit on board, but it's a little bit better for them because they do still have that Tarkentown.
How risky is
But
it for a Quinlan player to spark a rebellion you with the potential that you have 2 of your 2 drops in hand?
oh, it's very risky. It's definitely very risky, but they still get the better of the 2 drops. Maybe they don't even take a 2 drop. Maybe they take something else and try to mess up your curve. But I mean, Spark's a great card. I'm gonna keep making magic references, but like the Thought Season deck is never wrong for turn one Thought Seizing. You want to disrupt their plan. You want to take a piece away. You want to start getting advantages. So while I think it's very risky that they can get blown out by a lot of our opening hands with the Spark of Rebellion, I think the chance that we get blown out by the Spark of Rebellion is probably equally as high.
Interesting. I played Quinlan against Nicky in our testing. Nicky was about to play Quinlan,
Mhm.
and he told me that he was never going to spark me just because he needed to hold up the ping Tarkentown if we got to keep our 2 drop on the battlefield. he thinks that that was a
Right.
completely losing position for Quinlan. So it's interesting that you are threatened by that, even though they don't get to ping Tarkentown your first play if you do have the two drops.
Yeah, I mean that's if because it's only great if you have two drops. I mean, you played plenty of rounds this weekend. You know, there were games where you mulligan and you still didn't see a two. So I mean, you probably weren't counting the number of times where you only had one, or you mulligan and only have one. But it happens more than you think. It's risky, but I think it's better than them just playing their unit. So if they are scared of the ping pass game because you know they've seen me win with it before and they think they're going to get me, there's no real best option for the Quinlan player in that situation. I don't think that they're supposed to just leave out their ping Tarkentown in case I did play a two drop. I don't know though. That's something you have to ask somebody who has way more reps in Quinlan than me. But from the Sabine perspective, I think it's just as likely that I have, you know, zero or one two drops as I do have multiple two drops.
Awesome.
Somebody can run the numbers on that and tell me I'm wrong, but
Yes, we'll get the hypermetric calculators out. So we'll move
yeah,
into our next matchup. Cad Bane Tarkintown, another matchup that we got to see. Haven't mentioned yet, but very similar to Quinlan Tarkintown in terms of the idea of the pinging and passing and getting rid of your first play of the game. Um, why
yeah,
the
absolutely.
why the medal ceremonies out in this matchup as opposed to the wing leaders? That's a big difference in this matchup than the Quinlan Tarkentown
So
matchup.
we don't have this matchup on camera, unfortunately. This was the first of the top eight matchup. I was on the backup cam for that. They showed somebody else, but the CAD player I had bamboozles. If you're paying the alternate cost on bamboozle, you don't have to pay the villainy tax. So that's still a card that they have access to. Also, I think that Metal Ceremony doesn't quite do enough because they have more reach. So, like making our units slightly bigger doesn't necessarily amount to as much as it would when when Metal Ceremony is good. Cad Bane really does not want us to have units on the board at all. And they're pretty good about doing things about that between the CAD pings, between some of the other pings that the deck has, between Greedo and McClunky, and it's just they've got removal. So when they have a ton of removal, Meta Ceremony definitely gets worse. And then Chewbacca, the same thing. Like they have the ability to tap stuff down. They can cartel spacer it. They can disrupt the go tall plan pretty easily with the stuff that they have access to.
What are you most scared of in the Cad Bane Tarkentown matchup? In Quinlan, we know they have access to Plo to kill some of our bigger stuff, and they have
Yep.
Ahsoka that could potentially tap us down if we
Yep.
don't have a non-unit in hand. Um, CAD is a little bit different, right? They have a little bit bigger stuff. What is kind of the scarier big stuff that they have in their deck?
Yeah, I'm definitely, the Forlom Zuckus package is very strong. And when they get to play the Cad Bane unit, the seven drop, if the game gets to that point, you're going to be in a really tough spot. I got lucky that I had basically already put my opponent in check when he had played his unit. Um, but even that, like he talked to me after the game and said that maybe if he plays it differently, he might have been able to win that game. I'm not 100% sure either way. That card's terrifying. It hits for seven. Disrupts our whole board. It disrupts the go tall plan very efficiently. Um, Another card that was really tough to play against was the capture card, Relentless Pursuit. When they were able to capture a piloted ship, it felt real bad. You know what I mean? If they were able to capture something that I put experience counters on, it felt really bad. Like their ability to reset cards can disrupt the go tall plan a lot. So if we just go wide against Cat, I really like on the flip turn just going two drop, um, just casting two things on turn three instead of making something bigger or trying to play one unit because they do have strong cards, but if you give them a lot of threats to deal with, you're able to spread around the CAD damage and really limit their plan and their ability to like have autonomy over their own plan.
Sweet. So we'll move into another matchup. Qira Data Vault. Um, Same structure as always. Why the Wing Leaders, Medal Ceremony, and two Sindari's out.
So the Sindaris just become unnecessary. They more or less swap right out for the fighters, and the fighters is just so much better. Wing leader and medal ceremony, just because they have Kira's got removal. I mean, the wing leader can be good against power of the dark side, but I'm still not really thrilled about playing it because there's still so many other removal spells that can disrupt that plan, and then we're just left with a 2-1 anyways, so it doesn't feel great. Metal Ceremony is just the last cut. You got to cut something else. That card again, Qira doesn't want us to go wide. They're gonna put units in our way. They're gonna make us attack into their units. They're gonna eat up our units with everything they can. So it's really hard to get any kind of value off the Metal Ceremony.
Why do we want the Fighters for Freedom over the Sindaris in this matchup?
Saboteur is really strong. One of the easiest ways for Qira to beat us is to just stick a huge Chilston in our face, and we have to do a lot of work to get through it. Whereas fighters can just go around it. Also, Kira's really good at playing a 1 or 2 drop and then putting 2 damage and a shield on it. And fighters versus a lot of those can attack into it, eat the shield, get the sentinel out of the way, and probably still live. Fighters is also a card against Qira because we just want those extra points of damage that we put it down and then we cast a 4 cause and now maybe we can do 5. Yeah, there was a game where I cast because I had a fighters out. I cast heroic sacrifice on a tapped creature to deal the last point of lethal. Like it wasn't any red spell's going to get a point across, and even though they have 33 health, a damage is still a damage, and you really need every one that you can get, and getting those extra ones almost for free because again, I think we play this unit maybe even without that text, provided it was a rebel and heroic and all that. That damage ends up being very close to free.
Another card that I think is very interesting that you've identified as one of your important cards in this matchup is K2. So why do you want K2 very specifically in this matchup?
So against Tata, who's very, very, very strong Qira player, he was top aided with the deck. I played against him in day 2, and we went 3 games. In all 3 games, I was able to ECL my K2 into his Qira as soon as it flipped. And that was just an amazing feeling. We want to be able to get that Qira off the board immediately. Um, because if we don't, they're probably going to overwhelming barrage us, and we can start falling way too far behind. Having an immediate answer to Qira is really cool. Um, 4 resources. Qira flips on 5, but ideally they've ramped in their world, so she kind of flips on 4 from our perspective. So having that creature that just lines up perfectly with it, um, we don't have a ton of things that line up perfectly with it like that, and K2 just becomes very important. And then even after the flip turn, so you have the flip turn moment that's super important, but then also later in the game, they're killing every one of our units on site, and we need to get some amount of damage through. And we can't figure out how to get these points of damage through. And then we draw K2, and it's like, ha, kill it. I dare you. You know what I mean? Like it puts the opponent in a bad position where their cards end up not being good enough because they need their cards to save damage, and K2 is going to do damage regardless of what you do with them.
Is there ever a time that you would pick the discard mode instead of the damage mode? Um, Maybe not in this matchup specifically, but in matchups that you've played before.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Having options is always a good thing. So if I just never looked at one of the options and only thought it did 3, that would be a worse card. The discard comes up a lot less than the damage, of course. But if my K2 dies, I'm asking you how many cards you have in your hand. Like, that is my first question. I assume you're going to take 3 to your base, but if you tell me something like 1 or 2, I start really weighing that decision. There's some of the decks like Han, which we'll get to in a minute, that they're already going down in cards. So putting them down another one really hampers their ability to do things if it's timed, appropriately. If you catch them at the right moment, you can really mess their stuff up.
Awesome. Thank you. I believe that is our next matchup exactly. Let's talk about the Han 1 green matchup.
Yeah.
Why do we want to
Yep.
board out these Chewbacca's, a Darksaber, and Metal Ceremony in this matchup?
This is another one where I don't feel like going tall necessarily works because they're better at the going tall plan. Um, you can put Chewbacca on a ship, but their ship's probably better, and they're going to put their own Chewbacca on it. And now their Chewie flying a ship's better than your Chewie flying a ship. And now you've just fallen behind on the economy of the game. Dark Saber is kind of the same thing. There's definitely games where like Dark Saber is still going to be great, but again, this is a deck that has access to Bamboozle. Um, some of them are going to play it in the main deck. I'm not sure exactly how many. I'm pretty sure Alex had at least a Bamboozle in his main deck and possibly some other hate for it. Um, and, I mean, you just don't want to get 2-for-1. You want to be the one doing the 2-for-1.
Let's talk about the confiscates in this matchup. We've gone over the Heroic X a bunch here for pushing
Yeah,
damage.
yeah.
Why do we want confiscate
Well,
in this matchup
I will say
specifically?
one other thing real quick before we get to confiscate with heroic sec that's a little bit unique in this matchup is that there are times where you're going to play your ship and it does live through turn 2 or turn 1, and now turn 2 they have the falcon with a pilot on it. Maybe they put an R2, something small first, or they haven't put anything on it yet. You can heroic sack your ship into their ship. I'm pretty okay trading ships in this world with Han because their ships snowball just so quickly. Confiscate comes up in that same vein. We want to blow up the pilot when they get the pilot, but I do feel like it is harder to win the game by blowing up the pilot. I think you want to blow up the ship. I think that's the priority, but the confiscates can get the ship down to a manageable size for you to kill it when things start to go poorly. And again, it's just so action efficient. Like you're not doing it to blow up something tiny. Like you're blowing up a Chewbacca, like you're blowing up a Han pilot, like you're blowing up things that are big that are causing issues, and you're doing it all for one resource.
Awesome. So it's interesting that you talked about pilots not being good in this matchup. However, Luke Skywalker is in our important category of cards. Would you like to
Right.
go over why
That's
Luke is important in this matchup over Chewbacca?
well, we get to use Luke's second mode of I'm a 2-mana 3/2. That's the version of the card that we don't necessarily want to be playing first and foremost, but in this matchup we do. It becomes so important to go turn 1 2-drop. That's green. If it's red, it's going to cause issues because our second turn, as often as humanly possible, is going to be ECLing the Sabine's masterpiece into their Falcon and killing their ship. We want to get that ship before it gets counters on it. We want to ECL our Sabine's masterpiece into their ship, and we want our Sabine's masterpiece to live. Like I was saying with heroic sack, look, if you go red unit on turn 1 and then they play a Falcon and you've got the masterpiece in your hand, like I did it. You can watch me doing it. Like, I will still suicide that masterpiece in, but it is so much less strong when there's not a masterpiece standing and the Falcon gone. When you're trading, it's not as good. It's still necessary because you can't let them snowball the game, but the 2-drop green units become very, very important because we just need to set that up.
Great, thank you. And we have one more matchup for you. The Anakin Blue, or the Anakin Colossus matchup. Why do we want the Fighters for Freedom specifically in this matchup and looking to board out some other cards?
So we really want the Fighters for Freedom because it's a strong card to push extra damage, and the Saboteur becomes really strong. We Sundari is fine in the matchup. We don't hate it, but we don't love it. Sundari and Fighters essentially occupy the same slots. We just do that clean swap, and then we have to get that third Fighters in because again, it's so good in this matchup. So we just take out a Metal Ceremony. That could be a different card. I just feel like Metal Ceremony has the lowest impact on the game and is probably the card that I'm resourcing most likely. So that's just the third cut. We could have conversations about what that should be. I don't actually know. I guess I got lucky depending on how you look at it, that I never faced Anakin Blue all weekend. We got a little bit of testing into it. It wasn't a deck I was really scared of, and it was also not really a deck that I felt like there's a ton of options for. I think we just have to try to beat them, and hopefully we do. There's not a ton that you can do to change the matchup too far into your favor. I don't think that we want to do anything like preventing healing with Wolf or anything like that. I think we just have to hope our cards are better. And something like fighters, getting those extra 1 points of damage like that, that's how you make your cards better. You just sneak free damage in here and there. The important cards, fighters and Sabine, especially are so good against village people or village protectors. That card, it's one of the better like speed bumps that you can play against Sabine between being shielded and being a sentinel. It forces us to like waste two attacks a lot of times, unless we have one of these cards. Fighters just eats it and then just stays alive and ignores everything else about it. And Sabine is able to efficiently. I mean, Sabine's only a 2 drop, and the Village Protectors is a 3 drop, and Sabine just eats a Village Protectors and survives to tell the tale. That card shines in this matchup against one of the cards that we are very, very soft to. I guess as long as they don't put an entrenched on it, I'm pretty happy.
It seems you would be more scared to see Colossus than just regular blue base because of the extra 5 health. But how much does that extra card matter in this matchup? Do you find it mattering significantly, or is it something that is inconsequential and a reason specifically to play Colossus?
So this you probably would have to ask an Anakin player because I'm not 100% sure. In my testing, I found it slightly easier to beat the Colossus versions than the 30 health versions. And that comes down to them not having the right answers at the right time as much. There are plenty of times where the Colossus deck draws a good hand, of course. You know what I mean? And their cards do line up, but one less chance to draw a Village Protector, one less chance to draw Yoda, one less chance to draw the cards that really put a damper on our day makes the matchup a little bit better. It gives us the opportunity to close out in the mid game before the Anakin flip. I think you can go either way. I really don't know which is stronger into Sabine. It makes sense that 35 would be, but in my testing, the 30 health bases were stronger against me because I just felt like they had it more often. And having it is more important than, those last couple of points, I guess, because a village protectors against certain hands will save you way more than 5 life. A perfectly timed Obi-Wan will save you more than 5 points of health. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer to which is better, but personally, I'm more scared of the 30 health than the 35.
Alrighty, I want to give you a chance to look over your deck again now that we've gone over some of the matchups. Are there any cards that you are looking to potentially change as we move forward into more of this Sabine meta, I will call it, as that's the deck that has won the most recent major event? Do
Yeah.
you see yourself hedging more towards the mirror now that you expect to see people getting more reps on the deck and being prepared for it? Or are you looking to just keep running it back and doing what you know how to do?
I mean, I think that there's a good chance that not just because more people are playing Sabine, that I should probably hedge a little bit more, but more people know how I play Sabine, so I should probably hedge a little bit more. I don't think I necessarily have all the same advantages that I had going into Richmond after I'm, explaining my whole thought process. I think there's a good chance that I'd want access to the fourth Darksaber in the main deck and the third Chewbacca in the sideboard just because of that, the mirror potential, the more mirrors and more people onto my game. Uh, I could see cutting the metal ceremonies. I mean, that's a card that I'm a little partial to, but it really depends on Quinlan's place in the meta. But I can see building this version more in a way that I'm less scared of Quinlan and more scared of Sabine. I just can't ever really convince myself that I'm scared of a mirror. I find mirrors to be very skill testing, and my arrogant side will come out and I'll say I think I have more reps on Sabine than the vast majority of Sabine players. So the majority of the time, I feel like I'm gonna be favored in that matchup, just like before we sit down, before we even start shuffling up. So hedging the deck doesn't necessarily need to happen because I mean the field's wide open. Like we said, 10% Sabine. Even if that goes up, 50% to 15%, I still don't think that I'm necessarily as scared of that as I am some of the other stuff that I think might pop up. I think the Sabine meta might also bring on the anti-Sabine meta, and that'll be an interesting back and forth as we see, results from this weekend in Lille and just how the meta shakes up moving forwards. But medal ceremony, I mean, if Quinlan's not a big deal, if I'm less scared of Quinlan, which I'm a little bit less scared of after this weekend, I could see cutting the medal ceremonies altogether.
Awesome. Great. So I just want to thank everybody for listening into another podcast from Against.The.Galaxy. I just want to remind everybody again that we have started some social media that you can follow. Our Instagram is against_the_galaxy, and we're also on Twitter at ATG_swoo, and the profile is Against the Galaxy. If you are looking for more content like this, you can request some more decks in the comments, and we can try to give you another masterclass and go over some of our different experiences with those decks. And if you are looking for giving us some more feedback on how these first few videos are going, we would appreciate that as well.
I mean, links to all those social, they're going to be right in the description. We dropped the ball on that first one, but we're going to be better moving forward. This is a learning process for all of us. We really appreciate everybody who's here with us, for the first few steps of it. Um, we want to do really big things, and we can't do it without love and support from you guys. It's awesome getting messages telling me, already the first episode of the podcast was up for a day, and I'm hearing, "Oh, I loved your podcast. I listened to it at work." Like that stuff really does mean the world to me. And I know it does for the rest of the team too. Like we will be able to keep doing this stuff if you guys keep wanting this stuff, and we're enjoying doing it. So it's awesome that you guys enjoy it too. So I just also want to thank everybody for caring about what I have to say, I guess. And I look forward to continuing to make content with these guys and giving you guys as many tips and tricks and whatever else you may need to win your locals, to win your PQs, and to see me in Vegas.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Will. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Shout out to Nicky
Thanks,
for
Mike.
putting the presentation together for us. And we'll catch you guys in
Yeah.
the next episode.